So unless you've been living under a rock for the past couple of weeks, you'll have noticed that Apple seems to be making some pretty big headlines when it comes to war against the gaming industry. I'm going to go over a couple of reasons why I really believe this is going to have massively negative impacts on their business. So one of the first things to make the headlines was them disallowing Microsoft's xCloud app, and basically what that is, in case you're unsure of it, it's an extension of their Game Pass application which allows users to stream their Xbox games and PC games onto a mobile phone or something like the iPad as well. It works across numerous different laptops, and of course it's on Android already. And the big disappointing thing with this is it means that cloud gaming really well and truly is dead when it comes to Apple mobile devices. We don't have Google Stadia, we don't have GeForce Now, and now things like Microsoft xCloud has not been allowed. And Apple have come out and given us a very non-reason as to why this is the case, and it's apparently because they can't verify every single game that you can download on that. So their submission guidelines are that they must be able to be ranked in the application store, and they also need to be reviewed as well, which just seems just absolute rubbish. It's very much an Apple way of saying, hey, we just don't want cloud gaming on our platform, which I'd much rather them come out and be honest about. The second thing, and probably a lot lower of an issue, was then Facebook came out and pointed out that Apple were disallowing certain features in their Facebook gaming application, which basically allows users to play little games when they're watching people do their game streaming. Not a massive thing, but again, it's one of those things that Apple are policing these applications and not allowing certain gaming features, which is frustrating for certain types of users. So they're just two of the things, and the reason why I believe that they are massive issues is that Apple are locking away different software and different applications that users want to be able to use. When you start to look at different ways that people want to be able to do their gaming, they want to be able to access their information, Apple are now cutting that off completely. And again, they're not really giving a reason that backs it up. It's very much, like I say, it's a non-issue. The stuff that they're coming up with doesn't seem consistent across the board. We have things like Netflix and Amazon Prime, and ultimately we're streaming media through to our devices on that, and Apple aren't able to police that or review every single film that we want to watch. And also, when you start to look at it, Netflix have interactive content on Netflix now, which allow you to kind of play a game. So why has that not been held to the same sort of rules that things like Microsoft are or Google are? It just doesn't seem consistent. At first glance, it's not a major issue, but as cloud gaming really starts to take off and becomes one of those things that people do look at and consider, it could really eat into iPad and iPhone sales in the future, not to mention Macs running on silicon. And that kind of brings me to the next one, and this is the one that's been making headlines all over the place, which is Fortnite getting kicked off the App Store. Now, if you don't know about this one, then you've clearly not seen the news recently. And basically, in a nutshell, what happened is EPIC Trojan horsed a payment system into Fortnite, which allows users to be able to pay them directly using things like bucks. And they were allowed to pay EPIC a lower price because they weren't having to pay the Apple tax of 30% or the Google tax of 30%. Obviously, this is completely against the terms and conditions, so therefore they got booted off the App Store, and same with Google as well, no longer available on the Play Store. EPIC obviously were ready to go with this. They fully expected it to happen. They filed the lawsuits against Apple, basically claiming that it's unfair practice, that there is no other application store they're allowed to use, and things like that. They're not seeking monetary compensation, but they're basically taking the moral high ground and really jumping on this anti-competitive behaviour that apparently Apple have been displaying as of recent years. Where things get even more tricky is that Apple then gave them a further punishment by explaining they're going to remove all of their developer accounts, which is going to be very interesting to see what happens with regards to things like Unreal Engine and everything like that. Now, no matter what side of the fence you sit on with this, it has massive implications, in my opinion anyway, to Apple's future business. And I don't just mean in terms of the fact that you can't get Fortnite. That is going to be huge in and of itself. So basically, you're going to have a whole generation of kids out there right now who aren't able to play Fortnite on the mobile devices, which has an impact when it comes to them deciding on what their next phone's going to be or what their next tablet's going to be. So that will be interesting to see whether or not that has an impact. But where it really hits home, in my opinion anyway, but when it comes to the next generation of Apple Macs, especially the silicon ones. Now, the reason I bring that up is because one of the Apple's massive focuses are the fact that we're going to have universal applications. So somebody will be able to develop an application for the iPhone, for the iPad, and that would work straight away on the new Macs. Now, we all know from history, we just need to look at Windows Phone, BlackBerry, Nokia, Those sort of companies that were absolutely massive, but they were unable to harness the power of developers and get them on board. Apple has always been extremely successful when it comes to getting developers on board, but at the moment they seem to be taking a rather hostile approach to innovations or just in general, and the last thing that they want right now is to have developers against them, because that just means they're not going to develop for silicon. Why would they bother if there's a risk that they're going to get booted off the App Store if they don't play exactly by Apple's rules? Again, I'm not taking sides with this, but it is one of those things that developers will have to consider. The other big thing as well is for consumers when they're starting to look at things like Apple Silicon. I'm kind of bummed out that I won't be able to use GeForce Now, and I won't be able to use Microsoft Service either. However, one of my primary computing devices is my MacBook, and I can download those because Microsoft can make their application available through the website, and I can download it and install it. But here comes the issue that if Silicon is starting to use the same applications that you get on an iPhone and an iPad, we start moving a lot closer on our main desktops or laptops to a walled garden approach that Apple has. Now, whether or not that is the case and they do start locking things down, it's probably not going to happen. But what will happen is if a developer develops primarily for the iPhone and the iPad and then just ports their application across for the Mac, that's probably not going to happen, and then we start to lose out on some massive pieces of software. Another thing to consider as well is from a consumer point of view. If there is software that I need to use for work, for play, for whatever, and Apple and that developer have a spat and I can no longer access it, that's just not ideal for me at all. And it's not ideal for a lot of people. We don't care who's at fault, but when we lose out on software that we use and we need on a daily basis, suddenly that hardware is no longer appealing to us. All of this comes at a time when there are plenty of antitrust cases going against Apple at the moment for numerous reasons, and in my opinion, Apple do need to change their approach to things. I am an Apple apologist and I am an Apple fanboy. Anybody who knows me, anybody who watches these videos knows that I'm an Apple fan through and through. However, one thing that does really frustrate me is Apple's approach to developers and applications as they come through to the App Store. Look at Valve when they tried to launch the Steam Link. It was one of those things that just didn't get pushed through to the App Store for about a year, and Valve had to make concessions which basically removed features from it. It was really frustrating because that was a service that I really wanted to use, and that at least I had an Android phone at the time so I could keep using it. We're starting to see that behaviour over and over again where Apple don't agree with that type of service, and you know what? They take the consumer approach of we're policing it and keeping things safe for everybody, which is great. However, it's really frustrating when it's not particularly a piece of software that is gonna harm my device or put me at risk, and it's even more frustrating as a consumer when other applications get away with it, but apparently not gaming. I don't get it. So it's all up in the air at the moment, and who knows what's going to happen next. The Fortnite thing, in my opinion, I sit on the side of Apple with that. EPIC at the end of the day, if they wanted to negotiate something, they could have done so beforehand. And I know that they wanted to make a statement, but they have been doing that a lot lately. Buying up exclusives for PC gaming is just frustrating, and constantly bickering with developers and platforms, it just doesn't sit well with me. The one thing that I will not side of Apple on is the cloud gaming. I just think it's outrageous, and their response to that is just unacceptable. It doesn't make sense and it is not consistent. But at the end of the day, regardless of who's at fault for any of these things, the consumer is the one who loses out. We're the ones who can't do any cloud gaming on our iPad or our iPhone because Apple just don't agree with it. We're the ones that lose out on different games and different software because, again, Apple are having a spat with a developer. For whatever reason, these things are happening and it's taking away the software we have available to us. And we're in a day and age now where Android is looking a lot more appealing to a lot of customers. So I think it's time that Apple kind of buck the trend, sit up and take notice, especially with Silicon around the corner. Like I said, the last thing that Apple want to do is turn developers against them, especially when they're launching a new piece of software that could, in theory, make their next line of Macs sink or swim. They need developers on side. They need consumers to feel safe and confident that they can buy something and use the software they've always been able to. But right now, that sort of thing and the behaviour that's happening from Apple and developers towards them is definitely putting me off at least. So, let us know in the comments, were you considering Silicon, and do these sort of ramifications have any effect on your buying decision? Maybe they do, maybe they don't. Let us know in the comments. As always, hope you've liked the video, hit the like and subscribe button, and we'll be back soon with some more content. Just a bit of a rambling there about Apple and their war on gaming, but personally, I do see this having a massive effect. Like I said, they're going to lose a generation of gamers who are all playing Fortnite. It's just one of those things. It's the big craze at the moment. If they can't access it on their devices, they will go elsewhere. And like I said, the ramifications on Mac. It'll be really interesting to see how that plays out. Right, well, take care, and we'll be back soon.